Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series. Take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the Adventures League module, the Monster of Wonderia, designed by Anthony Joyce for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my content, consider using my affiliate links for online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/Rogue Watson. So Monster of Wonderia is part of the official Adventures League Spotlight series for the Wild Beyond the Witchlight series. It is number 4, I believe, of maybe half a dozen or more of these kind of mini modules. If you haven't run an Adventures League adventure, which I personally technically have not, they're typically pretty short, typically pretty linear, and typically very well organized. You've got a specific call to action, which is the reason the characters are coming together and doing a thing. And then it's very much like, here's A, here's B, here's C, and then we're done. You know, there's not a whole lot of side quests that are doing or any kind of like open world process here. These are very typically short, designed to be played in a one shot, essentially, in like a 4 to 6 hour adventure. And specifically, these Wild Beyond the Witchlights, of course, are all about the Feywild, and this one takes place in the domain of Wonderia, which is very much a almost like a children's book come to life. It's like, you know, you've got a lot of these, and I've got young kids, and it's you know, you've got all these different shows and books that are children learning about the world. You know, they're looking at animals and nature and science and everything, and they're gaining all this information, and there's very little danger. It's all just, you know, happy-go-lucky, whimsical fun times. And, you know, combine that with like an actual fairy tale, and you get something like this. I have mixed feelings ultimately. I think there's some really neat ideas in here, and there's a lot of really great opportunities for role-playing specifically. Especially, there's actually a unique opportunity to respec your character that's actually built into the main plot here. Like, the whole point of it is to kind of explore your own character's background, even imprint a new personality or class change or race or gender or whatever you want to change, background, alignment, whatever you want to change about your character. You can do that through the process of this adventure, which that is all very cool. What I was less enthusiastic about is that there's almost no exploration in combat, and you can make a D&D adventure that's very light on some of the pillars, but, and especially with combat, it can be very, very tricky. You're really working with disadvantage here, because ultimately D&D is, let's face it, a combat simulator with some other, you know, role-playing and exploration tools kind of shoehorned in there. So if you're very, very light on combat, which Wild Beyond the Witchlight is very light on combat, and that's something that you kind of have to know going into it, and you kind of have to be okay with it as a group, or else the DM has to make those adjustments, and it's instead very role-playing heavy. You know, Alice in Wonderland isn't going through with a sword and shield necessarily, or the character in Labyrinth isn't going through, you know, attacking everybody, even though there is there can still be some danger elements there. But it's a lot more about the role playing. I think what I was really mostly disappointed in is the exploration, because if you establish an entirely new world, a new biome, and drop my character into it, and then you say, okay, but I'm going to put you on this little, you know, 2-foot long cord leash, and then you're going from here, here, and here, and you don't get to see anything. That is what's really particularly disappointing to me. And that's kind of what happens here. Just in service of the story, it's almost over as soon as it begins. And I get that the Adventure League stuff needs to be short. That's kind of the point of it. But this one, even then, feels excessively short and linear. So in the beginning, you are summoned to this Feywild domain, and it should have something to do with your childhood. And it doesn't have to be like childhood trauma or anything. It can be just, hey, what's your, you know, favorite color or something, or what's a fond childhood memory. You don't have to be, you know, traumatized as children to be included here and have some compelling narrative. But the twist is that the Wonderia is made up of these little fey creatures called Wonder Fey. And the twist being, it turns out these Wonder Fey are it kind of dances around the concept here, but it's like these are souls being born into the material plane, or else it's just the um, where we get our childlike curiosity from, at least when we're initially, children. That comes from this Feywild domain, and that enters into the bodies of newborns. I guess it's kind of nebulous about how exactly what's going on here, but the twist being the characters essentially meet child versions of themselves, but who are very naive would be the bad word for it, but that's kind of what's happening here. They've only known joy, right? This world has no actual danger in it. Like, this illustration is really great, where they just kind of go around and talk to all these fun dinosaurs and everything, but if you actually try to really interact with them, they kind of puff into smoke. It's all very, nothing is particularly meaningful or serious, and it's all just playful joy time. And it gives the characters a chance to role play with that persona of their children, which could be a huge hit with the right group, or could just fall on its face if you're a party who enjoys dungeon crawling and killing monsters and getting loot, which I imagine a lot of D&D groups too. If you are that kind of party, I don't think you're gonna like this at all. Like, straight up, it's just not gonna work for you. But if you are relishing a chance to role play and especially explore your character's background, I think there might be some stuff to like here. It's designed for 3rd level. It does I scale a little bit. There's really only the one combat fight, but it does include the party level adjustments for scaling that encounter. And you might wonder, well, shouldn't this be like a level 1 adventure then? If we're really exploring our characters, backstories and everything, wouldn't that be more appropriate as almost a character introduction? And that's what I was thinking. But then when I got to the end of it, I realized, oh, there's actually a really clever way to respec your character. So it wouldn't make any sense to do it level 1, because I would respec a level 1 character. But instead, if you've played a few levels, you're like, I maybe would have rather done this, or maybe what's funny is I wouldn't even require, I don't require like somebody to go through a bunch of hoops to respec their alignment, for example. But for, class and background and race, really important mechanical stuff, obviously it'd have to be some magical shit going on to be able to respec that. And this kind of gives you an excuse for that, because what you're doing is teaching and imprinting your current memories and desires onto your child version, who is then going to be born as you. So then that will be reflected in your current. And I know your brain could go crazy thinking about this. And keep in mind, it's a Feywild realm. Time does not work regularly. It's a whole bunch of magical mumbo jumbo, but as an excuse, I think that works just fine. The bummer is there's just not much really happening. You meet up with this one, leader of the Wonderia, or one Wonder Fey. You meet up with your own children, which you're not supposed to immediately know that, but it's kind of teased. And then they take a brief shortcut, which is a cute little ritual you can take, where you have to, you're telling jokes, you're telling stories about your childhood and all these, and your favorite food, in order to take this shortcut through this, what looks like a whimsical fairy tale realm. So we're not actually going to see any of it. And then you appear at this cottage where this wonderfully lovely elderly storm giant, I believe, named Abuelita Ivalice, which is a fucking awesome name, and apparently is based on Anthony Joyce's own grandmother, which is delightful. There's a whole little back page on that, including a recipe for a dish that he particularly loved as a child growing up, and then shared it with all of us, and then uses that as the dish that this character then provides everybody. That's really cute. I love those kind of little inner workings of the designer. It's a bummer we don't get a picture of this character, because I would love to see what a grandmotherly storm giant, a very kind old storm giant, looks like. That may end up clashing with this other art style, though, which I think is amazing. Like this youthful children's book art style, I think it fits the story perfectly. The artist is credited as Allison from Little World Art. I wish there was more information about that. I tried Googling, and I think I found if it's Alison Black from Little World Books, maybe like a children's book author. But I prefer if there was a little bit of a blurb about this designer artist, because I thought these pictures are just absolutely phenomenal and really gorgeous. And there's a ton of them, and they're on every single page, which is amazing. Unfortunately, it reflects a more interesting world and story than what's actually provided here. I feel like the art actually kind of overtakes the story a bit, because I kept thinking like, oh man, this is gonna be really fun and doing all this delightful little children's book things, but there's just not much of that. You meet with the grandmother, and she basically explains the whole story, which is Oh, by the way, if you hadn't realized, these are your like children, or not your children. These are you all as children spirits that are going to eventually become you, and you can like imprint on them if you want to. And then, but they need to journey into this bag of holding that Grandma wears, and then they will be born onto the material plane. Which leads me to believe, like, does everybody have to go through this process eventually? Is that how you get your children born into your own body? Is you have to all come to this domain? There's a lot of weird questions I had, but essentially, you all hop into this bag of holding, and then you have to help the children overcome their anxieties and fears about moving on to the next stage of their existence. And that is represented by a bunch of boggles, I think is the name. Yeah, boggles, these fey creatures that come and basically taunt and not really even attack, but they just kind of use this intimidation check against your fey children versions. And then your goal, and this is the only combat involved, your goal is to either you can just fight and kill them, or you can actually just roll persuasion checks on your fey wonder phase and basically just, you know, convince them like it's okay and soothe them. So again, very heavy role playing, and you can absolutely do it that way. And especially if you've, you know, gotten really close with your own, which I think would be an interesting role playing opportunity for a lot of groups, because I feel like some character types and personalities would be very close with their childhood versions, and others maybe not. Maybe you did have a, you know, traumatic childhood or something, and you want to be reminded of that. Or you've just matured to this level where you're like, oh, that's games and stuff, and I don't have time for that. I'm Mr. Badass or whatever. In which case you'd be very standoffish. So I think that would be an interesting role-playing opportunity, again, for the right group that would actually enjoy that. Or you can just fight the boggles, in which case they have a 50% chance of turning into a red cap, and they have to fight the red caps, which are kind of little demon, fairy, gnome, imp things. And that's pretty much it. That's the end of the adventure. Once you do that, you have saved the Wonder Fae from their anxieties, which are represented by these boggles, and violence represented by the red caps, and then they can move on to their next stage. And then when you do that, it says the characters have a moment to influence their path in life by speaking to their Wonder Fae and sharing an important lesson with them before they enter the portal. This lesson may have profound impacts on the character's life. Specifically, this encounter allows a player to roleplay reasons for a character rebuild, although you do have to follow the AO player's guide. That is a really cool idea. That is a legitimately awesome idea, because respecs is not something that D&D usually allows. Obviously, you can multi-class, you can always, you know, move forward and go in different directions, but in terms of literally erasing the past and replenishing that with something else, it typically, you know, you can't quick save in D&D, so it's typically not something you can do. And especially in something like the Adventures League, where they have very specific rules about, you know, who can even join in adventures and what kind of loot you have and all this, and what even like books you can run and all these things. And this provides a very cool in-universe adventure way of respecking a past character, and it gives you fun examples of, hey, because there's all these items in the bag of holding, and you can give these items as a representation of your hope to change something. So for example, you can give your Wonder Fae a sword in order to change into a martial class, or give them a book in order to change into a spellcaster, or give them a mirror in order to change your class, race, gender, or age. You know, it's almost like that part of a video game where you've made your character, you've gotten to the tutorial section, and then you unlock, you know, the mirror or something, or just the game just lets you do it, or you talk to a certain NPC that just gives you that respec. And this is just an excuse to do that, basically, which I think is a cool idea. I do like the idea of an entire adventure that's not very long that allows you a respec at the end, and it makes sense because you're imprinting that on your younger self. So that is a legit neat idea. But I do think the entire adventure is just way too short and linear for the fact that we're being taken to this whimsical children's book that's full of all these gorgeous illustrations, and then we don't really do anything, but we just visit Grandma's cottage, hop into this bag of holding, have this kind of semi-interesting combat fight. I do like combat encounters that aren't just I swing, you swing, I swing, you swing, we all swing for ice cream, but that actually has different objectives. In this case, the objective is you want to protect these certain characters who are being attacked by these other characters, and you can do that either by attacking the enemy or by just rolling skill checks and helping roll those persuasion checks on those other characters, and that kind of deflects the enemy. And it even says if you successfully do that, that defeats one of the boggles. So literally you can just defeat them with the power of kindness. Also, we get a really cool battle map for the Bag of Holding, provided by, I think this is Christian Zoich's, CZEPEKU, but they have a really stellar Patreon setup where you can purchase these amazingly gorgeous full color battle maps with all these different variants and things. And these are obviously incredibly cool, and a Bag of Holding, just a really cool damn idea for a location or an actual battle. So that's hugely thumbs up for me. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for the Monster of Wonderia. Pros: provides a chance for players to alter, even reboot their characters. Again, I just think that's an awesome concept that I've not seen at all in D&D. It's not something that D&D typically lets you do, and it has actually written pretty well into the story to where the end of it totally makes sense, and it's almost kind of a twist where it's like, oh, by the way, now that you've saved your own, you know, younger character versions, would you like to change anything about yourself? And it can really be anything, and there's no real, you know, restrictions or limitations on that. You probably only should pick like one thing to change is probably the one restriction, but that's honestly enough, and I do think that's a really cool bonus. Pro: fun children's book illustrations depict the whimsical Feywild domain. These are just awesome, killer. I wish there was more information about this artist. I had to kind of Google, and even then I was a little bit unsure of like, okay, I think this is the right one. But these are really, really delightful, and I do love it when you've got a unified, uniform art style throughout a book, and the whole layout and everything looks gorgeous. And of course, it's professionally done, which I expect nothing less from Joyce. But the art is especially good. In fact, it may unfortunately be too good. And Pro: Bag of Holding is a fun location for a battle and a gorgeous battle map, which is right here. That is an awesome place. I wish there were more battles, interactive elements, unfortunately, to the story, which leads me to my next con, which is that it's too short, it's too linear, and Wonderia itself mostly just feels wasted. I really don't feel like I got enough of what could have been a pretty interesting, and give me some encounter. I think what would have really solved this for me is if instead of taking a shortcut to grandmother's house, give me like just 2 or 3 short little encounters that help, you know, reflect the concept of children, and maybe you're imparting lessons upon them, and maybe you can subvert the fun thing about you know, children's book stuff, and maybe include like there's an invasion from other things, so it's a really twisted thing. Or maybe you want to not do that and just straight up do a legit children's book, in which case your players are maybe playing the role of, you know, like the Cat in the Hat or whatever, or Nature Cat, or one of these other you know, the entity that knows all, and they're imparting all the important information, you know, the adults in Sesame Street or something. That can help the children characters. But some, you know, you can keep the same theme, but do give me a few encounters along the way. I think that would have really helped assuage a lot of my critiques about just not having enough content here. Final verdict: far from your typical D&D adventure, The Monster of Wonderia is a feel-good children's story full of important role-playing opportunities, but severely lacking in exploration and combat. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel, and support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Adam, Stan, William, I'm Loud, Kyle, Brennan, Genocider, David, Eclectic, Roleplayer, Roll, and Lindsay. And Gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcus, Dead Lizard, Lion, Sam, Olympia Spuds, Jerome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise. Thank you all very much for your support.